feels very strange saying Happy New Year on the 1st of February, but Happy New Year. It's been a bit of a crazy time, I have to say, and I apologise for not being able to do the December class, but we had a family bereavement, so I had to go home early, but we're all good and we're ready to go and greet 2023 and get the most out of your machines, which is super exciting. Something else that's super exciting is that a brand that I built for probably 4 years over at the Innovation Hub, Cutting Craftorium, is coming back. Just finished the first USB. Now, this is a sign of the times that we live in. We can no longer call it Cutting Craftorium because cutting is a dangerous word on Facebook, apparently. So we're calling it Digital Craftorium, but it will be the same thing, just a different name. So that's launching towards the end of this month, which is, I'm so happy about that, because that's the brand that I've had so many customers contact me and say, please, 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 can you bring Cutting Craftorium back? Well, we're now doing it, which is fabulous. So I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about the code that we've got for you today because it's phenomenal. So if you are a Club Highlight member, you will get all your regular discounts. So depending on which tier you're in, you'll get your discount off your purchases. When you've done all that, we're also going to give you £5 off each pack of the Craftmaster 12x12 cardstock, which is phenomenal. It brings it down to, I think, £8 something a pack, which is brilliant value for money because it's perfect for your ScanNCut. And it's MEL 5, so MEL number 5, and that's for 2 weeks, I believe. So it doesn't matter how many you can buy, 10 packets or 1 packet or 50 packets, you'll get £5 off each pack, not off the order, off each pack. So that's a phenomenal deal for you as well. So we'll reiterate that as we go through. I'll get Andrew to put the code in the chat, and then we'll be able to, you'll be able to treat yourself, which is great. Right, so came into work this morning and thought, right, what's the most fun way to learn the ScanNCut? The most fun way to learn the ScanNCut is to do a project. So Valentine's Day is 2 weeks away. So I thought I would teach you how to make a flower from a heart. So all the basic shapes that are inside the machine's memory are not just what they are. We can make them into all sorts of different things because we have the capability to change the shape. So we can make it taller and slim, we can make it shorter and wide, we can add things to it by welding, we can remove things from it by going into canvas and subtracting pieces. So basically what you see is just the tip of the iceberg. So I thought in this class I would teach you how to make this flower. And then what we can do is go on and I'll talk you through the rest of the card because it's super, super simple to do. But this is just made from the heart that's inside the machine's memory. So let's get started. Now you might need to watch this back a couple of times, but of course it will be on YouTube tomorrow, so you'll be able to do that. So there is a format that I use to be able to do things like this. So we're going to start right from the beginning. I'm going to explain to you how I do it so when I'm designing the flower, I'm going to go through all that process with you because you need to know that, and then you'll be able to do it with lots of different shapes. So the first thing we're going to do is go into our patterns, into our basic shapes, scroll down until we find the heart that just has the plain outside edge. So this one, so it's BA A067. So we're going to click on that and we're going to set it on the mat. I'm just going to move it in a little bit so it's in the center of the screen. And I'm going to go to Edit and Object Edit and Resize. And straight away, I'm going to separate the height and the width because I want this to be a tall, skinny heart, okay? So we're going to separate it. Now, it's up to you how big you want. So this heart is going to become 1 petal, and then we're going to make a group of 2 petals, which then makes the flower. So I want mine to be about 40 millimeters because when it's finished, you're going to have this twice. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. So if I go into 40, and I'm going to take the width down to 10 millimeters. So 1 centimeter by 4 centimeters, basically. Now I want 2 of them, okay? So I'm going to press OK. I'm going to go into the numbers here. I'm going to press 2 and I'm going to press OK. Now, I don't know whether this size works yet or not. We're going to find that out. But I want to show you this process because then you'll know how to work out what does work and what doesn't work. So the next thing we're going to do is grab both of those. So we want to select both of them. So we're going to multiple select by selecting the 3 red squares. We want all the shapes on the mat. So we select the full mat and we press OK. Then we want to align them so they're sat on top of each other. So we're going to go to our directional arrow buttons. We're going to go to our alignment function at the top of the screen. And we're going to align them centrally vertically and centrally horizontally. We're then going to press OK. And we're going to tap the screen to release the shapes, okay? Because right now, both of them are still selected. So now I press OK. And we're going to go to Object Edit, and we're going to rotate one of them so that it's upside down. So we go to our rotate symbol, and we rotate it 180 degrees. So they're still on top of each other, but one is upside down. And then all you're going to do is keep pressing OK until you get to your directional arrow buttons again, and you're going to move it down slightly. Now, if I zoom in for you now, you'll be able to see. Bear with, zoom in, Melanie, use the right buttons. It's been one of those weeks. And then I'm going to nudge that bottom one down so there is just a little gap in between. Now you can have as much gap as you want, but for this particular flower, I don't want too much of a gap. So I'm just going to move it a little bit further, about there. So the next thing I need to do is group that together. So we do exactly the same thing again. Multiple select, everything on the mat. We press OK, but this time when we go to Object Edit, we group them together. So now I have that first set of heart petals, if you like. So now what I need to do, because what I want to do is create a complete circle of these. So I want them to there be a whole circle of these 2 hearts, so that it turns round on itself. So as this one comes to the right, that one will go to the left. So I need to know how many degrees I need to rotate the second one so that it doesn't touch the first one. So we do 2 of these to start with, and it sounds quite complicated, but once you've done it a few times, it becomes second nature, and it's probably one of the things I use a lot for ScanNCut is designing my own flowers. So if I go into our number and ask it to put 2 in, we're going to do the same thing again. So we're going to multiple select everything on the mat, press OK, go to our directional arrow buttons and align them centrally vertically, centrally horizontally, press OK, tap the screen to release the shapes. When you tap the screen, it doesn't look like anything's happening, but it has. And then we're going to rotate the second one. So I'm going to rotate, and when we're rotating, we need to rotate in an increment that is divisible into 180 degrees. So 360 degrees is your full circle. All we're worried about is getting one petal to go into a semicircle, because the other side of the circle will take care of itself. So I can see that 30 degrees is perfect for this heart. So if I zoom in for you, you will see exactly what I mean. You don't want them overlapping, because then you'll end up with a flower that you can't curve, you can't add any shape into. So if I scroll down now, you can see that I've now got a nice gap between those hearts. Whatever the rotation is, it needs to divide into 180. So you could do 10, you could do 20, you can do 30, you can do 45, etc., etc. It must be divisible into 180. So when I've got that, and I know that that works, I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to put it back where it was. So I've now got 2 sets of petals sat on top of each other. So 30 degrees divided into 180 is 6 sets. So I need 6 sets of petals. Now I've got one underneath this one that's selected, and I've got the one that's selected. So I need to, when we go into our Object Edit and our number, I need to ask it to do 5, because it takes into account the one that's selected. So that's the first one. So we need 4 more, which gives me the 5. The one that's sat underneath, it's not looking at because it's not selected. So in total, we need 6. And it will put them in a diagonal like this. So we're going to do the same thing again. You know, at the beginning of these classes, I said to you, ScanNCut is very repetitive. And that's a really good thing, because what that means is that you learn it quicker and it becomes muscle memory. So we multiple select everything on the mat. We press OK. We go to our directional arrow buttons and our alignment function at the top. And we align it centrally vertically and centrally horizontally. We press OK. And we tap the screen to release the shapes. Then when we press OK again, we're going to start our rotation now. So we're going to go to Object Edit and our Rotate button. And we're going to rotate the first set of petals 30 degrees. So 10, 20, 30. It will tell you at the top. So any degrees that you're counting clockwise, it will start at 0 and work its way around. If you're going anti-clockwise, it subtracts it from 360, but it will always tell you at the top, so you never get lost, which is good. Now, if I press OK now and try and get to that other set there, sometimes it's a little bit tricky. If you're working with really fine shapes, it's quite difficult to do. So what I always do is use these buttons to select the next row, because otherwise you can get in a little bit of a pickle. We've managed to do that one. So we'll go to Object Edit, and this time we're going to rotate that one 60 degrees. So we're going to go 10, 20, 30. So that will line up on the first set that we moved. And then another 30 will give me the 60. So we're starting to build our flower. Now, trying to do this with individual hearts and get them to rotate round a circle is a blinking nightmare. It's hard work. So doing it as a pair means that you're only doing half of it really, which is great. So I'll show you this way now, because this is what I want you to get used to doing. We want to get to the next set of petals that's in that pile. So we go to Object Edit and Rotate. This time we want to rotate 90 degrees. So we just click on 90 degrees and that gives us that one. Then we go to our next one. And this one we want to do 120 degrees. So we do 90, 100, 10, 20. Which gives us our 5th set. And then our final set will go anti-clockwise because it's quicker. So we'll go to Object Edit, Rotate, and we will rotate anti-clockwise by 30 degrees. So now what I've got is a whole circle of those hearts. Now, if you wanted to cut that into your cardstock, you could do that. So if you wanted to create a background where the pattern is cut into it, then absolutely you can do this. So if we multiple select everything that's on the mat, press OK, go to Object Edit and group it, you've then got that pattern that you can cut into a card. Excuse me. And you can make that smaller and bigger and do everything that you normally do with your shapes. But that would make a really cool background. It would actually make a really cool stencil. So when we've got to the stage where I've shown you the next bit and you're happy with the flower, we'll create something with that, because I think that looks really cool. So we've got our flower, but it needs a centre. So when I zoom in, if we were to cut that out of a piece of card now and we wanted to use it as a flower, excuse me, all we've got is separate petals. We haven't got a flower, so we need to add a centre. Sorry, I'm going to have a drink, guys. I've already done a class today. My throat goes a bit funny. Andrew, can we just put the code in, please? Thank you. Right, so I'm back. Okay. So what we need to do now is add a centre to that flower. So I'm going to press OK. And we're going to go back into our patterns and back into our basic shapes, and I'm going to select the circle. And the circle is BA045. So I'm going to select that, and I'm just going to set it on the mat. And then I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to go to Object Edit, and I'm going to make it smaller. Now, I'm not sure how small I need it to be yet. So let's start at 1 inch and see where we get to, so 25 millimeters. But now I need to put that in the middle of there. So guess what? We do exactly the same thing again. So we multiple select everything on the mat, we press OK, we go to our directional arrow buttons, we go to our alignment function, and we align it centrally vertically and centrally horizontally, and that puts that circle right in the middle. Now I'm going to press OK, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to zoom in to 400%, and then I'm going to scroll down on the screen so that you can see it. So wherever those petals overlap, that's what's going to become the centre of your flower. So if you want your petals to be longer, you need to make your circle smaller, because once it's welded, all this bit that's inside the circle is going to disappear. So if you want a chunkier flower, you will make it bigger, and if you want a more delicate flower, you'll make it smaller. So I'm going to tap the screen to release the shapes. I'm going to go into Object Edit and into Resize, and I'm going to make that slightly smaller. So let's make it 15 millimeters. So again, zoom in and make sure that all those points on the inside of the flower are still inside that circle, because when you're welding, it's like gluing. You have to have them overlapped so that you can then, so that they can weld together, so that you can glue them. It's like if you'd cut all those hearts out and then you'd cut a circle out, you have to overlap the hearts over the circle for it to look like a flower, for it to meet. So now we're going to weld them. Once you're happy with it, weld it. So we're going to multiple select everything on the mat, press OK, go to Object Edit, and then weld it. So your weld button is here. So you've now got your perfect little flower now. So that now will cut out as a flower. So your heart, which was a traditional round heart, we made it into a tall, slim heart. We've now made it into a flower, which is just, for me, is what the ScanNCut is all about. It's not just about cutting mats and layers for your cards or cutting apertures. It's about taking a shape and understanding how the ScanNCut works to the point where you can come up with things like this. And I think this year we'll probably do more of this. And I know when we open our training academy in April, we will have dedicated classes to ScanNCut. We'll do some for absolute beginners, and then we'll do some where we make a project just from the basic shapes, like we did on Made from the Memory USB. So there's a lot planned for ScanNCut this year, which is really exciting. So then what we want to do is we want to cut lots of these. Now I've already made the flower, so I'm not going to cut them out because there's something else that I want to show you. So I'm going to make this smaller. So you then decide how big you want your flower to be. So let's say we want this one to be 65 millimeters. We then want 3 of those. So we want 2, because when you look at the flower, there's a gap. There's that gap when we rotate in between the hearts. We want to fill that with another petal. So just like you would when you're making flowers, you've got your flower with your die, you offset one by gluing another one on top and putting the top petal in between the petals of the bottom layer. So we want 3. So we've got 2 that we're going to cut and overlay, and then we've got 1 that we're going to resize. So resize Melanie, not number. We're going to go down by 10 mil. So I'm going to go down to 55. So I've got my 2 larger ones, and then I've got my next layer. So then I want 3 of those. So select it, ask it to do 3 of those. So 2 we're going to keep for a flower, and 1 we're going to make smaller. And I'm going to go down again by 10 millimeters. Same thing again. So I'm going to ask it to do 3 of those. And you can put as many or as few layers on this as you want. It's entirely up to you. So I'm going to go down to 35. And then I'm going to ask it to do 3 of those. And then the last one we're going to do is we're going to take that down to 1 inch. And it's up to you how many layers you want to do. So to get the most out of that cardstock, that you're getting £5 off a pack, which I'm actually going to go and do some shopping because that's fabulous, is to use your arrangement function. And I think we've done this before. So we use our arrangement function here. The top option will rotate those shapes any which way it needs to get the most out of your cardstock. The middle option will rotate it up to 180 degrees, so it'll turn the shape upside down. And then the bottom one will just put them in a straight line. So if we use the top option, it's then going to process that information, and in its little brain, it's moving them around to see where it can get the most out of. So you can see here, it's moved all these little ones into situ. So we've got all the flowers that we need to be able to cut out and then build your flower. And it's as simple as that to be able to make a flower from a heart, there's some really unusual shapes on there that you can make some really fabulous things with. And don't forget, you can weld a shape onto a shape to make something else. And that's the really exciting bit, because you can make centres for your flowers then. So, for example, what time are we at? Oh, we've got loads of time. Right, so what I did for this card, so we'll go through the actual card so that you can see what we actually did. So we've made the flower, so I've cut the whole thing, so everything that's on my screen I've cut out of red, then I've cut out of pink, and they're from the Cherry Bakewell set. And then what I've done is I've just built them up. So I've stuck the 2 reds together, 2 pinks, 2 reds, 2 pinks, 2 reds, 2 pinks, and built it up to make this flower. Okay. Once you've done that, you can save that onto a USB, into the machine's memory, into the cloud. So you can then save that and you never need to make that flower again. You come back and you can resize it, which is great. So you've created a flower that's going to be there forever. So that's that bit. Then what I did was I created the heart. So the heart, I went back to my basic shape and scrolled down, and we chose the same heart again. And you might want to get a pen and paper for this if you want to make this card, because I made this heart, I'll tell you, 169 millimeters high. So you can do that here on this first screen. So I'm going to unlock the aspect ratio there, so separate the height and the width. I'm going to make it 169 high. And this is just because I did 6.65 inches by 3.35. I have this thing where if I've got a number, it has to work with another number. So if I had 95, I'd have to have 45. It's just the way my brain works. But you can have it whatever size you want. That's the joy of it. You know, you imagine if you went and bought a die of that flower, you'd have to buy all those different sizes. You've got hundreds of different sizes of that flower that you've just created, which is super exciting. So 169. I love that fact that I never go, I wish it was a bit bigger, wish it was a bit smaller. It's none of that. It's great. So I'm going to do that by 85. Let's have a look. There we go. So I've got the heart. I'm going to set that on the mat like so. I'm going to edit it so that I've got object edit, and go into the button where we create an offset line, because I want a matte layer for it. Now on the CM series machines, you would have to go into Canvas workspace to do that. On your SDX machine, you've got your offset line function on here. So we're going to go into there, and I created a 3mm outward offset line. So as I click on this, you'll be able to see on the screen, you've got the original shape. If I just zoom in for you, you've got the original shape on the inside, which is selected. So if I move that, that's your original heart. And then you've got your perfect matte layer on there. So you just cut those out, one out of pink, one out of red, or whatever colours you're doing. And those become your matte layers here for your heart, which I thought was really quite cool. I like the idea that we've got the heart here, and people will have to look really hard to see that you've made that out of little hearts. So we're using the same shape, so it's going to work. So you do that, and then the You and Me is actually pre-installed into your machine's memory. So we go to Pattern, and we go to Welded Words, and we'll go into the section that gives you all the words that you've got on here. And I'm going to scroll down, and I've got to find, because you've got extras on here than you have on your CM. So You and Me is right down here at the bottom. So if we click on that, That's already sorted for you. We don't need to weld it. So have a look at those welded words because they're really useful. And it might be that you want to have, you know, a big word and then a little sentiment that goes with it. So it might be that it says happy in big letters and then birthday, whoever it's for. So you can really mix and match those words together. And I love the fact that they're welded already because that really takes the work out of it. So the you and me, I resized to, well, I rotated it first because I liked the idea of having it going up the side of the card because the heart is tall and slim. I wanted to represent that in the wording. But when I cut it, it wasn't quite long enough and I thought I don't really want to stretch it because I didn't want it any wider, but I wanted it longer. I didn't really want to stretch it because then it can go a little bit out of shape and it looks a bit strange. So I thought, right, you know what, we'll do 2. So I rotated it anti-clockwise, first of all, like that. And I made it 120 millimeters high. So let's go into our resize. And you can just see how in control you are of these words, you know, of everything on your ScanNCut. That's why I love it so much, because it gives you that opportunity to change it and it to be what you want it to be rather than what it has to be because it's a piece of metal. And I will never ever get past that. For me, it will always be something like the ScanNCut because it's so versatile. You know, just those flowers, you'd have to buy so many dies to get all those different sizes that it would be crazy. So I cut 2 of those out of white and 2 out of black, and I just created a drop shadow so that the black stood out of the white, and then glued it all together. So the leaves are actually a different shape, which is super cool. So I'll show you how we did the leaves. So you can see, you know, when people, if I took this into a classroom and went, right, we're going to make that flower, most people would go, I'll never be able to do that. Yes, you will. It's knowing how the machine sees things and how you make it work for you. And I don't think there's been anything that I haven't been able to solve. And I love that because I love it when people say, so how can I do this? And I'll stay up all night if I have to make it work, but I'll do my best to make it work. So if you've got anything like that, if you're thinking, how do I do this? Just put the questions in the chat because then on the next class, I can answer them. So we can bespoke this personally to you, you know, or comment on YouTube, whichever you prefer. But I think it's easier in our chat because then I can see them. Going on YouTube, I get distracted very easily because I'm like, oh, what's that? Oh yeah, let's learn a bit about pottery. Oh, what's that? Oh, let's do a bit of terrible. Right, so leaves. So we're going into our basic shapes again. So everything apart from the wording is done from that basic shapes. And it's amazing how many different things you can do with this. And it's really interesting because we've just been, when we're working with the Cutting Craftorium USB, we were working out how we could make things work for Cricut users. Because Cricut is quite bizarre. When you import a file, even if it's an SVG file, it splits everything into layers. So if you've got a design, a pattern inside a square, like a stencil design, if it hasn't been compounded, so if the detail shape hasn't been digitally punched through the big outside shape, it separates it all and it puts it all in a row. So we've been trying to work out how to do that. And I have to say, in the process, I'm looking at Cricut and you get about 15 basic shapes with it. 15! And then everything else you buy is a subscription from the digital library that they have. So to get all these is amazing because you get hardly anything in other ones. So I'm really, really pleased about that. So we're looking for a shape that looks like a leaf. Now, we keep going down. That one's pretty obvious, I would say. And there is another one, that one. When you rotate that, that looks quite a lot like a leaf. But there is also this one. So this is is it spade? I always get these wrong on playing cards. Spade, looks like a spade. So we're going to set that on the map. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. So we're going to go to Edit and Object Edit, We're going to go into resize, and we're going to separate the height and the width. That's the button for me that makes a big difference. And we're going to make it slimmer, and we're going to make it shorter. So we're now creating our own leaf design. So you can have it like that, you can have it wider, you can have it narrower, you can have it tall and skinny, you can make a flower out of it. So you can do this flower thing again, which is great. So you've got all those. So all I did was then cut 4 of those and just stuck those behind my flower, and that's the card done. So from a heart, a club and a word, you've made a card. And I think that really does give you an idea of where you can take the ScanNCut, because to make things like this, you know, you would have to buy, well, let's see, you'd have to buy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different sizes of that one die. And I know some people are bringing out plates where you've got all the different sizes on one plate, but you still only got those sizes. You can then make these really big flowers if you wanted to. You can absolutely make them fill a whole mat and make big ones for like walls and over mirrors and over bed heads and things like that. So I love doing stuff like that. The other thing I want to show you is how to make, you know, when you do probably like a poppy, and you get those dies that are like long thin strips of metal, and you roll them up and it creates a centre for your flower. I want to show you how to do one of those, because that's really cool too. So this is where your zoom button is really good, because you can get right into it, into the detail of this, because it's going to be quite small. So we're going to go into our pattern first of all, and let's bring on a basic shape, and let's just start with a square. Let's set it on the mat, and let's go to edit and object edit. So we're going to resize first of all. We're going to unlock the aspect ratio, and we're going to make it really narrow. So I'm going to do it a little bit chunkier than I normally would so that you can see it clearly. So let's take that down to 3 millimeters, and let's take it down to, I don't know, let's do 30. Okay, so we've got a 30 millimeter high by 3 millimeter wide rectangle. We're going to press OK. We're going to add. So we're going to add, and let's do a heart. As we're doing hearts, because it's nearly Valentine's Day, let's do a heart. So we're going to go back into our basic shapes, scroll down, and go into our heart. Let's make that 5 millimeters. So teeny, teeny, tiny. In fact, let's make it a bit bigger than that, because otherwise you won't be able to see it. And let's set that on the mat. So I'm going to move this just over here like that. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Okay, let's do it at 10. So what I want to do now is put that directly in those two lined up, okay? So we're going to multiple select everything that's on the mat and press OK. We're going to go to our directional arrow buttons, and this time we're going to go to align, but we're just going to align them centrally vertically. So I know that that heart and that rectangle are directly aligned underneath each other. So now when I press OK and tap the screen, I can move that heart down so that it just overlaps. And this is where your zoom comes in. And on the SDX, you can zoom in and you can nudge the shape down while it's in zoom. So if I just move this back up again, you can see you've got the gap, and then you can nudge it down while it's in zoom. On the CM, you have to come out of it to then be able to move it down to then go back into zoom. So I'm just going to nudge this down, and I'm making sure that the top of the rectangle isn't sticking out of the sides of the heart. So where it goes from a V at the bottom, I don't want that rectangle on the outside. So I always make the rectangle narrower than the actual shape. Even if it's like 2 millimeters wide and it's got a 4 millimeter circle, always make the rectangle, the stem of the shape that you're making, always make that narrower than the actual shape that you're welding on top of, because then you don't get those sticky out bits. So once we've got that, we're going to weld those two together. So it's the same process. Multiple select, everything on the mat, press OK, go to Object Edit and weld it together. Okay, so you've now got, I'll zoom in for you, you've got your heart that's now attached to your rectangle. Okay, super cool. So now I want a whole row of these. So I'm happy to weld that, so I tell it I am. So now I want a whole row of these. So I'm going to ask it to do, I don't know, let's see how many we can get in a row. Let's ask it to do 40. I don't know whether it'll fit 40 on or not, but we'll soon find out. And this is what I do. I'll play around with it. So I don't think, right, I've got to get it right first time and get cross with myself. I'm like, oh, okay, so what happens if I do 40? Well, if it puts them on the next line, then I know that that's no good and I need to change it. And it's as simple as that. So let me just do this bit and then I'll answer a question from Karen. So I've got all of these in this line here now, and I want them all in a straight line. So if I press OK, and I go back to my arrangement function again, which is here, I'm going to make sure first of all that my pattern interval is on 1, because I want these close together, because I don't want to have to glue 2 rows together to then be able to get that, you know, when you have to glue 2 together and then you have to wait for it to dry, and when you roll it the card becomes too thick. I don't want that to happen. So I'm having it on a pattern interval of 1. And when so the pattern interval is the distance between the shapes. So when it sets out all those 40 shapes, it makes them as close as they can be without you doing it physically yourself. And then if you had it on 2, they'd be further apart. If you had it on 3, they'd be further apart, etc., etc. So the higher the pattern interval number, the further apart the shapes are. The lower, the closer they are. And I want them all in a straight line. So I can see now that it's put far too many on. 40 is far too many. So what I'm going to do is move this one here. I'm going to keep that selected. And I'm going to go to Edit. And I'm going to multiple select part of the mat this time. And I'm going to drag the arrow down over that top row because I want to keep that. And then when I press OK, it will highlight all those that are underneath, all in one go, and I can pop them in the bin. So I've now got my row that I need for rolling. Now I'm actually going to get rid of that one as well, because I need to have a rectangle that goes right the way along the bottom of here to be able to, for you to be able to get your tweezers round to be able to roll it. Because if I go right to the edge, you're not going to be able to roll the thing because you're not going to have any spare card left over. So I'm going to go multiple select, everything on the mat, press OK, go to Object, Edit and group it together. So now I've got the row of all those hearts. But just like the flower petals, they're not welded to anything. So if we cut that out now, you just have lots of rectangles with a heart on top. Great for cake toppers, if that's what you want to do. So you could make them bigger, make them into a cake topper, but we want to make a rolled flower. So I'm going to press OK, and I'm going to add, and I'm going to bring on a square again. Okay, so it doesn't matter, you can use the square or the rectangle. I'm just going to click on the square because it's there, and I'm going to set that on the mat. So we need to decide how deep we want that band to be. So that will depend on how much volume there is in your flower. So if you've got something that's really chunky and really full and you want a stamen that goes right into the middle, then you want something that's quite deep, because that's what's going to stick into the middle. If you've got something like a flatter flower, you want it as narrow as possible. Okay, so we'll make this quite chunky so that you can see it. So we're going to Edit, Object Edit, Resize, separate the height and the width, and let's make it so that it is, let's do it at, I don't know, 10 millimeters, a centimetre. So now if I tap on that one, it tells me that's 274 millimeters. So when I tap back on here and separate the height and the width, it needs to be wider than that. Okay, so let's keep going, 290. Okay, that will give me a nice way to be able to get hold of the tweezers at the end of that little tab at the end and roll it up. So what we're going to do now is we're going to weld that to that, but we need to line it up first. So we're going to multiple select everything on the mat, press OK. We're going to align it first of all centrally vertically, so it puts those in the middle of there. So we know that we're going to have an even space at either end. And then we're going to align it to the bottom. So we're going to align it to the bottom. Okay, so we've now got our rectangle that we're going to weld to those little spokes there, so that we then have that rolled flower effect. So I'm going to press OK, Object Edit. They're both selected already, so we just press Weld, and I've now got my row. So look, I've now created my own rolled centre for my flower, and it's as simple as that. It's super, super, super cool. So quite often I'll look at something, whether it's on TV, whether it's in our creative department, whether it's in a craft store, and I'll go, I can make that on my ScanNCut, don't need to buy that. And every time I think that, I'm like, okay, so that die there would have been £15. So I knock that off what I've paid for my ScanNCut. And believe you me, over the last 8 years, it's paid me back so much money. I've saved so much money just being able to make my own files. And I think this is, you know, for this year, that's really exciting, because I don't think there's anything really that you can't do if you think about shapes, because everything is a shape. You know, everything. I'm looking at a camera now that's a circle inside a rectangle, and it's got rounded corners. And then I've got like a band that comes around the side. Well, I can make that. I can replicate that. And that is really, really exciting. And you will get there. You know, I know when you first, I think because it does so much and you want to get to that stage quickly because it's exciting, sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming, which is why we do these free classes, because I want everybody to be able to do what I do on the ScanNCut and get as excited about it as I do, because for me, it's not just time saving, it's doing all the boring bit so that I can do all the fun bit, which is great. So we've got that now. Now, what if, so I'm okay to weld that. So we've now got that, which is there. How far? Oh, I'm all right, I've got 20 minutes. Right, so I can then save that if I want to save that. But what if I wanted to make one that's like, you know, when you see a poppy and it's like a circle and it has all the little spokes coming off it, and then you lay a few up and you get this lovely little centre. So let's do one of those. So let's go into our patterns and into our square. Same thing again. Now I can do it from here. So we unlock the aspect ratio. I'm going to make it narrow. So I'm going to make it 4 millimeters wide. And let's do it at, I don't know, let's do 60. Okay, so we've got 60 by 4. So we're going to set that on the mat. So what I want to do now is bring this over here. And I want a little circle this time. So we'll add, go back into our patterns, go into here, go down until we get to the circle. I'm going to make that 6 millimeters. So remember, I'm making it bigger than the rectangle so that it will sit directly in the middle. So I'm going to make that 6. In fact, I'll just make it 10 for now, because then you'll be able to see it better. So again, edit. I'm going to duplicate it first of all, because I know I'm going to want one here and one here. Okay. So I'm going to duplicate the circle, so I've already got it, so I don't need to go through that process again. And I'm going to move it out of the way. And then I'm going to select the rectangle. And now I'm going to multiple select part of the mat, because all I want to do is put that circle on top of there. So I'm going to do part of the mat. I'm going to drag over that second circle that we've just duplicated it. And I'm going to align these two together. So alignment function, and align it centrally vertically. Press OK and tap the screen to release the shapes. Now I can move that circle down so that it overlaps. I'll zoom in to show you. It overlaps that rectangle. Okay, so that's one end of our little stamen. So I'm going to press OK. Now I'm going to take this one. I'm going to weld this first. Remember your process, Melanie. I get ahead of myself because I get excited. So multiple select again, part of the mat, drag over that circle, go to OK, Object Edit and Weld. So I've now got that piece. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing with this circle here, but we're going to align it to the bottom. So we're going to press multiple select, everything on the mat, press OK, go to your directional arrow buttons and align it centrally vertically. And then we're going to press OK, tap the screen to release the shapes, and then we can move this down so that it overlaps. Now you can count to make sure that it's absolutely bang on the same as the first one. So you can make sure, if you're like me and it's got to be absolutely right, you can get the circle to the top there and then count how many spaces up or down you need to go. So then I'm going to just weld this one. So multiple select, everything on the mat, press OK, go to Object, Edit and Weld. So now I've got, looks like a baton that a cheerleader would have. I've got a rectangle with a circle on either end. So now, just like we did with the flower and the petals, I'm going to duplicate that. I'm not expecting you to remember all this, by the way. You'll do it a little bit at a time, but I wanted to give you as many different things in the hour as we possibly could. So I want 2, and I'm going to press OK. I'm then going to multiple select, everything on the mat, press OK, go to Object, Edit, and align it centrally vertically, centrally horizontally. Press OK and tap the screen to release the shapes. So now we go back to what we did with the flower and we find out how many degrees I need to go to separate those 2 shapes. So if we go to rotate and we go 10 isn't enough, I can see here that it's still overlapped. So let's do 20. So always make sure when you've done that, that you zoom in and you make sure that those 2 circles have a gap in between them there, which they do. Because if you overlap them, it will still weld, but it won't look like a stamen in the middle of a flower. It will look like something completely different, which might be what you want. In which case, have a play around with that, because that actually would make a really cool shape, because it would make almost like the outside of a flower and then all the inside bit would be cut out. So just play around with it. Just don't put the pressure on when you go into your craft room and you sit in front of your ScanNCut that you've got to make a finished project. Play with it. Just, I wonder what would happen if. That's got me in trouble a lot in my life, especially when I was a kid. What would happen if I pressed that red button that said do not press? But press the buttons and ask the questions. You're not going to break it. Unless you drop it from a great height, you're not going to break this machine. So play with it. So now I know that I need 20 degrees. So I'm going to undo that. So I've now got 2 layers there. So 20 into 180 is 9. So I need 9 sets. So I've already got 1 under there and I've already got 1 selected. So I now need another 8. So the one that's already selected, it's counting in the 8 and then it's given me another 7 plus the one that was underneath it. So now what I'm going to do is multiple select, everything on the mat, press OK, go to your directional arrow buttons, alignment function, align centrally vertically, centrally horizontally, tap the screen and press OK. I wish I had £1 for every time I've said that. Then we're going to go to Object, Edit. Now tap the screen. So rotate wasn't lit up then because I hadn't tapped the screen properly. So tap the screen. If it comes up and rotate isn't available, it's because all the shapes are still selected, but you haven't completed that function. So you haven't grouped it or done whatever you're going to do with it. You need to tap the screen to release those shapes. So rotate 10, 20, press OK. Now it's difficult to get to that next straight set. So use your select arrows, go to Object, Edit, rotate again, 40. Press OK, keep going, get to your select button, Object, Edit, rotate. This time we want 60, so 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Next one. And it takes a little bit of time, but you're only doing this once. You don't have to do it every time. Bear with us. Oh, we're back, sorry. Right, so I've gone to my next one now. So I'm going 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Okay, so now we do next one. So now we want rotate, we want 110 this time. So we want 90, 100. No, we don't want 100. So 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Okay, so we've got 100. Now I can get this one. So now I can tap it. But can you see what it's done? It's given me the second one. So sometimes when you tap it, it wants to go to, can you see how it's now moving through all those layers? You need to get back to that vertical because that's where your layers are. That's where your set is, your pile of these. So now we want to rotate. Oh, edit, object edit, rotate. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120. Okay, let's just keep going because we've got time. So back to that set. It doesn't want to do that. It wants to go to the bigger set. So use your select arrows. It's so frustrating if you don't do that because if it moves one wrong, you're like, well, where's that come from? So just take those extra few seconds to do it methodically because it's quicker in the long run. So now what I can do is go to Object Edit and I can rotate the opposite way. So I can go 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay, and then I can go to my next set using my select arrows and make sure you get to that single layer, that single vertical layer there, and then Object Edit, rotate, 10, 20. So now you've got a different type of flower, if that's what you want it to be, or you've got a stamen from the centre. So we multiple select everything on the mat, we press OK, we go to Object Edit and we group them together. So now you've got your stamen. Now what we need to do is add that centre in again. So we're going to press OK, we're going to add, go back into our patterns, back into our basic shapes, go down, go into your circle, let's make it small, so let's take it down to 20 millimetres and see where we get to. That might not be enough, take it to 25 just in case. Set it on the mat. Then we're going to edit, multiple select, everything on the mat, press OK, directional arrows, alignment function, centrally vertically, centrally horizontally, press OK and then zoom in. So zoom in and see if you're happy with where that circle is, whether the size of the circle you're happy with. I want to make that a little bit smaller. So I tap the screen to release the shapes, go to Object Edit and make that circle a little bit smaller. And when I'm happy, I then weld it. So I multiple select everything on the mat, press OK, go to Object Edit and weld. And now I've got a centre for the flower. And it's, you know, nobody, when I first started on the journey with ScanNCut, there was nobody else that had a machine. And I was like, right, I just have to learn this. And it's 8 years ago, it was 8 years ago, 2 weeks ago, since we launched the ScanNCut. And I'm still thinking of new things to do, which for me as a crafter, and I'm sure for you as a crafter, is super exciting because you don't want to spend a lot of money, and it is a considered purchase, there's no doubt about it. You spent a lot of money on it and it just sit in a box. That just breaks my heart. I'm sure it breaks your heart. But you don't also want to get to the end of it. You know, when you buy something like, I don't know, a set of dies or a tool and it does quite a lot of things, but you get to a point where it's like, right, I've exhausted that now, there's nothing else I can do with it. I haven't got to that stage. And I use this every day and I'm 8 years in. So what the next 8 years are going to be like, I don't know. But I just think it's a piece of equipment that pays you back over and over and over again. All it asks from you is a little bit of patience and some trial and error. And everybody that's watching this class now and everybody that watches it later on YouTube can absolutely do what I've just done. When you look at a shape, you look at something, you know, a die for a stamen of a flower, look at it and break it down into shapes because it's achievable. You can't do like a robin unless you because you can't make that curvy line unless you freehand draw it in canvas. But your basic shapes and your flowers and things like that. I mean, it's just amazing what you can come up with. We did the made from the memory USB, which was where I taught you 10 projects, where I literally videoed each project showing you how to make the files. That's the kind of thing we're going to do on some of the classes. So you might come for a couple of days, where one day we build all the files and the second day you make the project. That's exciting. Because, you know, you can make your own flowers. We're not giving you SVG files and you're not buying the files, you're creating them. And it's super easy to do. And I know as a beginner, you're probably going, yeah, it's all right for you. You've been doing this for 8 years. Yeah, I have. And I wouldn't have thought of this right at the beginning. But what's good for you guys is that I've learned this and now I can teach you. And I love that. That's really exciting to me that we can share this knowledge, because there's no point me coming up with something and not sharing it. That's boring. There's no point in that. So what was the question from Karen Andrew, please? How do you link your ScanNCut to Canvas? Okay, we'll do that before we end the class. So home and get rid of that. So you go into your settings here, Karen, on your main screen, like that, and go right down to the bottom by using the double arrows there. And then go to network here. So you go to your network and you need to select, get your Wi-Fi set up. So you'll go into here, it will find, so this is Highlight Crafts, it will find your network, and then on the back of your router there's a code. You type your code in and it will link to your Wi-Fi. Once you've done that, you then go back and you go to Canvas Workspace. So you click on here and you go to Register. Register the connection between Canvas Workspace account and the machine in order to send cutting data with Canvas Workspace. For more details, refer to the user's guide. So you have your account that you've set up on Canvas Workspace open, and then you press next and you type this number. So on your Canvas Workspace, when it's open, in the top there's a bar that has like a little head and shoulders of a person. That's you, and it will have your username at the side of it. So you click on that and you go to register machine. Okay, so you click on registering your machine. It will then ask you for that number. You type the number in, you don't need to put the dash in there. So you literally type that into the box in Canvas Workspace. And then when you press OK, Canvas Workspace will have given you a 4-digit PIN code that you then type in here. And once you've done that, they talk to each other. So let me just go through that again for you. So you go into Canvas Workspace here, you click on that, you go to register, so you've got your Canvas account open, you go to register, you press next here, and then you type that number into your Canvas Workspace box. It will automatically put that dash in for you. Then when you've done that and pressed OK in Canvas, it will come up with a 4-digit PIN number. You then press OK on your ScanNCut and you type the PIN code in there. And I think next time we're going to do a little bit of something in Canvas Workspace, because that's just a whole new level of amazing. But what I would really like is, if you want to see anything specific in these classes, please contact us either here, or you can email me directly, mel@highlightcrafts.com. Just a little quick sentence that says, I'd like to know how to do this or this or this or this, because I want to be able to bespoke this to you. You know, you can ask the questions that you can't ask on air. So give me a list of questions, what you're struggling with. We'll collate it all and then we'll go, right, next session we're going to do this, this and this. Because there's no point me just doing stuff if that's not what you want to learn, which is super cool. Go on, Andrew, sorry. So Pauline's having trouble cutting a lace doily. Can I ask where the file is from, Pauline, please? If you email me directly, Pauline, I'll sort that out for you. If you've bought it, I don't know whether it's off a USB, whether you've bought it as a file from a different company. I have to say, I spent £10 on Etsy the other week buying cutting files for a card for Stephanie's husband for his birthday, and they were absolutely shocking. They were SVG files, but you couldn't cut them because it just shredded everything. So Pauline, please contact me directly, mel@highlightcrafts.com. If it's one of our files, I'll have a look at it for you, and we'll answer it next time, or I'll email you back directly, Pauline. So absolutely, we'll see that. When you're buying SVG files, on this machine, on the SDX 1200, it will read up to 900 paths. So before you buy it, make sure you know that there aren't too many lines on it. And yeah, I'll have a look at that, Pauline, depending on where you bought it from and what it is. We'll see if we can work it out. I might get you to save the file into my Canvas account and I'll try cutting it, because there's no reason that it shouldn't. If it's been, so when we design files for the ScanNCut, there is a certain minimum line width, which is 1.4 mil. And there's also a certain size, which is 3 mil, for the blade to be able to rotate and come out. If the designer hasn't followed those not restrictions, but the line width and the size of the shape, that might be why it's doing it. So we need to have a look at the file for you, but we can sort that out. Don't forget your code MEL5, because to get these, probably just over £8, is fabulous. This is the best cardstock that you can use. It is the same as that other brand that we used to sell, the American one, and but they're in colour families. So you can buy just reds and pinks, purples, blues, greens, neutrals, yellows, where it doesn't matter, you know, if you're a Club Highlight member and you're saving your points, you'll still get your points, you'll still get your discount depending on which level of points you're in, and you'll also then get £5 off, not off the order, per pack. So this is the best time to buy this cardstock. It's solid core, which means the colour goes right the way through. White core cardstock is made with chalk, and chalk is abrasive and it will blunt your blades quicker. This has a really low chalk content. So while it's on a deal like that for the next 2 weeks, stock up, because it's beautiful card to cut, and we're going to be using this a lot going forward. So while you're getting £5 off, that's crazy bonkers, right? So if you get your normal price, then your discount, then your points, and then your £5 off. So treat yourself. Please absolutely feel free to email me just what you want to see, what you want to learn, what you want to do, and then we'll have great fun. But I'd rather do it that way so that I'm ready with the questions than wait for the questions to come in, because it gets a little bit messy then. Thank you for your time. Please go and put Create and Craft on now, because David's on with a brand new USB, which is brilliant, I have to say. So go and check that out, and I will see you. What date is the next one, Andrew? Is it the 20th of February? Yeah. The week of the 20th. So keep an eye out. We'll post an exact date. I think it's the 20th of February. I think that's when we're doing it. So come back. We didn't do January for various reasons, but you'll get 2 now in February. So that's great. So if you can let me know what you'd like to see, amazing. And if I don't hear from any of you, I'll just do my own thing. Have a lovely evening. Take care, and I will see you very soon. Lots of love. Bye.